Life can be unpredictable. Sometimes we find ourselves in situations we never expected, betrayed by those we love, facing hardships, and wondering if God is still with us. But the story of Joseph reminds us of a powerful truth. Even in the darkest moments, God is still at work. Join us today as we explore the incredible journey of Joseph, a young dreamer who endured betrayal, slavery, false accusations, and prison, only to rise to power and fulfill God's divine plan. And through his story, we will discover 5 life-changing lessons that can guide us in our own faith journey. Joseph was only 17 years old when he received dreams from God. He saw a future where he would rise to greatness, but his brothers saw it as arrogance. Their jealousy blinded them, and instead of celebrating Joseph's destiny, they plotted against him. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, "Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it." Genesis chapter 37 verses 18 to 20. But they saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. "Here comes that dreamer," they said to each other. "Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams." Joseph's own brothers betrayed him. They stripped him of his robe, threw him into a pit, and sold him into slavery for 20 pieces of silver. He went from being his father's beloved son to a slave in a foreign land. But what they meant for harm, God was using for good. Romans chapter 8 verse 28. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Lesson 1. Not everyone will understand your dreams, but trust God's plan. Despite being sold as a slave, Joseph remained faithful. He worked with excellence, and God blessed him. Potiphar, an Egyptian official, saw Joseph's integrity and placed him in charge of his entire household. Genesis chapter 39 verses 2 to 4. The Lord was with Joseph so that he prospered, and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. When his master saw that the Lord was with him and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did, Joseph found favor in his eyes and became his attendant. Genesis chapter 39 verses 7 to 9. Now Joseph was well built and handsome, and after a while his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, "Come to bed with me." But he refused. "How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" Joseph faced temptation, but he chose righteousness. He knew that true integrity is not just about avoiding trouble, it's about honoring God. Lesson 2. Stay faithful in trials. God sees your integrity and he will reward it. Even in prison, Joseph did not lose hope. He continued to serve, and soon he was placed in charge of all the prisoners. His gift of interpreting dreams became his way of ministering to others. Genesis chapter 39 verses 20 to 21. But while Joseph was there in the prison, the Lord was with him. He showed him kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. His gift of interpreting dreams became his way of ministering to others. Genesis chapter 41 verse 14 says, So Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he was quickly brought from the dungeon. When he had shaved and changed his clothes, he came before Pharaoh. Joseph had waited 13 years since his betrayal, but in one moment he was lifted from prison and brought before Pharaoh. When the time was right, God elevated him. Lesson 3. Delays are not denials. God is preparing you for greater things. Years later, Joseph's brothers came before him begging for food during a famine. They did not recognize him, but Joseph knew who they were. It was the ultimate test. Would he seek revenge or extend grace? Genesis chapter 50 verse 20. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. It was the ultimate test. Would he seek revenge or extend grace? Lesson 4. Forgiveness brings healing. God's plan is always greater than our pain. Joseph's story is a testimony of God's faithfulness. From betrayal to the palace, God was always working behind the scenes. Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Lesson 5. What the enemy meant for evil, God will turn for good. If you're facing trials today, remember Joseph's story. Trust in God, stay faithful, and believe that He is leading you to something greater. If this message encouraged you, share and subscribe to Christian Hope and Light. Let's grow in faith together.